I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the December 15th, 2025 study session of your Ashland City Council. We'll start with the audit presentation. Sabrina.
So tonight we have Bryn Morrison, our interim finance director, and Miranda Iwamoto, our accounting manager. I can't see you, so this feels weird. They're going to run through some quick slides, and we also have Amanda more clear here from Moss Adams, who is our audit firm, and they will run through some things as well.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. As mentioned, I'm Bryn Morrison, Interim Finance Director, along with Miranda Iwamoto, who's our Accounting Manager. Oregon municipalities are required to file an annual financial report and audit with the Oregon Secretary State of Audits Division, which must be conducted by an independent CPA or public accountant. And the city has contracted with Baker Tilly to perform this service. They were formerly Moss Adams before. So we're just going to go through the overview of the audit, and then Amanda Moore and Kim Reno will present the audit to you folks. So preparation for the audit began by the accounting staff at the end of June and went to the beginning of September. And then the field work, which is a quite extensive process, began to be fulfilled to fulfill the engagement request, in September and continued through November. And the list on your screen here are pieces of the annual comprehensive financial report. With the contract with Baker Tilly, we, due to a staffing shortage this year, increased the contract with them to help us with the financial reports. However, staff did prepare the transmittal letter, the management discussion analysis, and the notes and the supplemental reporting, as well as statistical section of the audit. One item of note in this fiscal year 2025 audit that has been different than previous audits was the utility account adjustment and the allowance for doubtful accounts. And the auditors will present that as part of their presentation. So I will turn it over to the auditors now for their presentation.
Hello, everyone. Can you let me know somehow if you can hear me okay? We got new laptops over the weekend, and I want to make sure that you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Are we able to share our screen? We have a small presentation. Oh, it looks like Tim's sharing now. I'll start with just a quick introduction. I'm Amanda Moore. I'm a principal with Baker Tilly, formerly Moss Adams. I've been with the firm for just over 25 years now, and I work solely with state and local governments such as cities and counties, and I'm here today to present the audit results for the fiscal year end 2025. And then I will let Kim do a quick introduction, and then I think that she's going to kick us off.
Hello, yes, I'm Kim Reno, and I work with Amanda at formerly Moss Adams, Baker Tilly, as you've probably heard a couple of times already now. I've worked at the our Medford location for the past 12 years, primarily working in government audits and also nonprofits, and I do a little bit in benefit audits. So here's the agenda for today.
Excuse me for just a moment. Can we put the pictures over on the left side? I think there's a little bit more room over there.
Just minimize them.
Or well, I'd like to still see their whoever's speaking. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So here's our agenda for today. So first we'll go over the engagement team, and then we'll discuss the nature of the services provided, discuss the auditor opinions and reports, the communications to those charged with governance, and then lastly end with new standards. So this first one is just showing you the engagement team. So this is me and Amanda on here. Amanda's responsible for signing of the report and making sure that the audit gets to completion. I assist her with reviewing a number of the audit sections, assisting the client. And then what you don't see here is kind of our other engagement team members, which are from both of our Portland and Eugene offices. This next slide goes over the nature of the services that we provided. So similar as to other years, we audited the city's financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, or GAS. And then because the city also receives and expends greater than $750,000 in a given year, they're required to have what's known as a single audit under uniform guidance. So because of that, we also audit under governmental standards. And then we also assisted and reviewed the technical aspects of the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR, for compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. We also review this for the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, Certificate of Excellent requirements. So this is an additional certificate that the city receives that just basically means that the financial statements are put together in a clear, concise way. And then we also perform procedures over compliance testing and reporting under Oregon minimum standards. So because the city is a Oregon municipality, they are required to have an Oregon minimum audit. And so we look at both budget and procurement laws, as well as a few other things that are required by Oregon minimum standards. And then number 4 is we also perform a single audit of federal grant programs under uniform guidance. This one is on hold this year. Amanda will probably touch on this a little bit more, but essentially the compliance supplement, which is what we use to kind of outlay what we're supposed to audit, was delayed in the current year. And because of that, we've done most of the procedures. We just really have to wrap it up. But because of that delay, it's currently on hold and has not been issued yet. And then lastly, reporting. So we discussed with those charged with governance the overall audit plan. So that happens at the beginning of the audit, and the audit results, which is what we're doing here. And then we also communicate any internal control findings and any issues of non-compliance. So this next slide goes over our audit opinions and reports. Amanda, did you want to say something?
No, sorry.
Okay. I saw you go off mute, so I thought maybe. So that first one is the financial statement, audit opinion, and report. So this is over your guys' financial statements. As in prior years, you guys received an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statement. So this is really the gold standard. This is what you guys are aiming to get, and this is what you've received for a number of years. And I really want to say thank you to Miranda and Bryn. You guys have had some turnover this year, but they really stepped up and helped. And were very speedy with getting us all of the items that we requested. And it was quite a feat this year, but you guys issued earlier than normal. This next opinion or report is over the Oregon minimum standards. So if we were to find something that had a reportable finding, we'd be required to report that to you. There was no reportable finding in the current year. And then the government auditing standards report, there was also no reportable findings there. And then the uniform guidance, as I mentioned, that's your report over the CFA, or schedule of expenditures. That one is currently on hold. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
So those are our reports, including the audit. And additionally, we communicate some additional items each year that our audit standards tell us are important to communicate with those charged with governance. We issue a separate letter, and we also presented the same communications to the audit committee. So this just highlights a few other areas that occurred during the audit that are not otherwise noted in our audit reports. So the first one is about plan, scope, and timing. If we had any changes related to timing, if the audit was delayed, we would communicate the reasons to you why that was occurring, or if there was a planned change in scope. This year we did have a scope change, just related not specifically to the audit procedures, and Bryn touched on this in her opening remarks, but we did provide some assistance with drafting of your financial statements this year, or your ACFR. So we provided some assistance in putting that document together. That does not alleviate management's responsibility to make sure that that document is complete and accurate, materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. But because of the turnover in the finance department, we were able to provide that assistance with the financial statements. Significant accounting policies, it's important to note that your financial statements have a number of accounting policies that management has selected. Those are all in note 1 to your financial statements, so just pointing out where those are. And then in the current year, there was a change to one of your accounting policies. So, and we like to highlight that as part of our audit process. The city did implement a new accounting standard that was GASB statement number 101, which is on compensated absences. So this standard required management to look at all of the city's types of leave and put together an estimate if those leaves would be utilized. So in the past, under the old guidance, you only had to accrue a liability in your financial statements for compensated absences if it was expected to be paid out. So typically, a lot of times that excluded sick leave because that wasn't paid out upon termination. Under the new accounting standard, you did have to include that liability in your financial statements. If it's more likely than not that leave balance, including sick leave, were to be used just through payroll means. So that did require a change to your accounting policies. And actually, I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about some of our the past adjustments. The next item there is management's judgments and accounting estimates. So this is to highlight some areas in your financial statements that are based on accounting estimates. Some of the most significant accounting estimates in your financial statements really are related to your PERS liabilities as well as any OPEB liabilities. Those are based on actuarial data and estimates and what your balances are. And then management does have to take that information and then utilizing a methodology, allocate those to the appropriate funds as well as functions. And so there is estimates related to that. Additionally, you have estimates related to capital assets, the useful lives on how quickly assets are depreciated over time, as well as your leases require you to utilize a discount rate that you have to estimate. And then, of course, allowance for doubtful accounts on your accounts receivable, which Miranda mentioned, is a significant estimate in the financial statements as well. So just wanting to highlight that your financial statements do include some areas where management has to make estimates in the financial statements. As part of our audit process, we do have set a materiality, which means we don't test every transaction. We do have a materiality that we set because when we do express our opinion over the financial statements, we're expressing an opinion that the financial statements are materially correct. So when we do that, we set a number of different thresholds. And so if we are to identify an error as part of our audit process, we have to evaluate that error. If that error were to be material, management would be required to make that adjustment in order for you to still obtain your clean or unmodified opinion. However, if that adjustment is not material, management does have the ability to pass on that adjustment and not record it in the financial statements and still have a clean opinion. We do have 2 past adjustments in the current year. One of them is related to the prior year. So whenever you do have a past adjustment, you're usually going to see that for 2 years because we do have to evaluate the reversing impact had that adjustment been recorded in the prior year. So that one, if you remember from last year, is related to an estimate related to your accounts receivable, which now has since been corrected. There was an estimate on what accounts might need to be written off or set an allowance for in the prior year in some of your utility funds. So we have those adjustments in the current year, the reversing impact of those. And like I mentioned, management has since developed a different estimate of what those are going to need to be allowed against and have recorded that in the current year. So it's unlikely to see that again next year unless we were to identify some other error. The second one is related to compensated absences. This one's a little bit unique. So this is directly related to the impact of implementing GASB 101 for your compensated absences. There's a little bit of a difference between what GAAP requires and what our auditing standards require as relating to these types of adjustments. So when you're implementing GASB 101, you were supposed to evaluate what the adjustment would have been at the end of fiscal year 2024 and record that difference to beginning net position as part of your financial statements. However, GASB 100, which talks about how you are to implement new accounting standards, specifically says that that's not considered necessary if it's not material. However, our auditing standards say when we are looking at any sort of implementation, we do have to at least advise management of that this is over our past adjustment threshold on recording that adjustment to net position. So management in the current year, when implementing GASB 101, recorded the entire balance to the end of the year, which was an immaterial change. And so we do have a past adjustment really just related to the impact of the current year net position. And this is one of those adjustments that I mentioned that you might see 2 years in a row because we look at the reversing impact. This one will not have that one. This one is a single year impact adjustment. And so, and a number of other governments like yourself did not record the adjustment to net position and ran the entire balance through the current year, which giving that was immaterial. So a little bit of a unique one there. The last three are really pretty just informational. If management were to consult with other accountants regarding some sort of disagreement related to application of accounting policies or principles or an audit procedure that we were performing and they consulted with other accountants, we would let you know that that occurred and that we met with them as well, because it's important to make sure that both parties have the same facts and circumstances, especially if they're coming to different conclusions. We're not aware of management consulting with any other accountants. If we had any disagreements with management or difficulties in performing the audit, we would communicate that information to you, and we're pleased to report that we didn't have any disagreements with management or difficulties in performing the audit. And as Kim said, the audit went really well. You got done a bit earlier than in the past, and so the audit went very smoothly. Your team does a really good job at getting us the information that we need in order to be able to complete our audit. You can go to the last slide. And I won't go through an entire accounting lesson here, but we think it's important to at least let you know of the new accounting standards that are out there. In the current year, we've already talked about GASB 101, and management had to implement that in the current year and resulted in some additional liabilities in your financial statements. GASB 102 was also effective for the current year, and this is related to any constraints or that you may have a significant impact to the city. So constraints or concentrations that might have a significant negative impact to the city over the next 12 months would be required to be disclosed in the financial statements. So that one did not have an impact. There was no disclosures updated for that. And that is a disclosure only item. It does not impact your financial statement numbers. In the next year, you will have two new accounting standards to implement, GASB 103 and GASB 104. GASB 103 will impact your financial statements next year. It's going to impact all government financial statements. There's going to be a significant change to your management discussion and analysis, the MD&A that's right at the beginning of the financial statements. So I definitely recommend jumping on that early because there is some significant changes to the MD&A next year. Additionally, there are some significant changes to how the proprietary funds are reported on, and there's a new essentially section in the statement of changes related to what is called subsidies, and just really clarifying definitions for non-operating revenue. So definitely something to get ahead of because those will impact the financial statements and will require some evaluation in order to implement those standards. The last one's GASB 104, and this is related to certain capital assets. Over the past 5 years, you've had to implement a number of new accounting standards that have impacted capital assets. Leases, subscription-based IT arrangements, and while this hasn't impacted your city specifically, there's also the public-private partnerships that could have an impact. Because all of those standards, as implemented, do impact the reporting of capital assets, there has been a lot of inconsistency in how governments are reporting those in their note disclosures. And so this standard really clarifies how they should be reported in the note disclosures. So definitely could have an impact to the notes and how that note is disclosed. Additionally, they're provided some guidance on capital assets that are held for sale and how you might report for that. So definitely could have an impact to the city's financial statements as well. So, and with that, we just want to say thank you and would be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Questions, councilors? Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Good to see you again, Amanda. I have a question about the. Thank you for going in some depth about the allowance for doubtful accounts, because that's something that we really came to grips with 2 months ago when our finance director reported a $2.7 million of uncollectible receivables in several different utility accounts, utility funds, but also hitting obviously our general fund to a lesser extent. We heard that much of that has been long coming from 2020, post-COVID, and you mentioned that was already disclosed last year in 2024, but I didn't notice it last year. I didn't see it. I don't recall a discussion of that in last year's audit report. It's very prominently figures in this year's audit report. And it calls for me a question about, and I understand that this is a cumulative effect and it's a one-time, write down. But it seems to me that there should be a way that we can get standard reporting on maybe a future problem building up. If as we have a delinquent accounts and other businesses, you have an aging of delinquent accounts report. Is that a report that you've seen that's standard in municipal governments that operate utilities like this or other kinds of accounts that could go into delinquency and build up over time?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything that I can think of like standard. I would say that it is something that needs to be evaluated annually. I do think the years were with COVID and how that impacted governments was a little bit unique. But I do believe that it is something that should be evaluated each year, looking at older aged receivables and determining whether you're going to collect on those. And if not, if you think that there's some reasonable basis that you're not going to collect on those, to establish an allowance for doubtful accounts. But I wouldn't say I have I couldn't think of a specific work paper that I see in like every single government's binder, because usually the allowance for doubtful accounts is usually typically pretty immaterial. And so that's not an area where we spend a lot of time looking at. Obviously, over the past couple years with the city, we definitely have, but it is something that should be looked at every year.
Go ahead.
So it is a normal part of your process to ask about the staff's estimate
we do,
of collectability.
When there's old aged AR, we definitely do. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
okay.
we did, if you were to look in the prior year, I know you mentioned you don't remember hearing that last year. It was in those charged with governance letter. So separate from our audit reports, it talks about our past adjustment in there in the prior year.
Got it. Thank you. I didn't notice there. I looked at the actual statements themselves and the notes and didn't see it there, but I'll look. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate your explanation into what's going on. And in that, I wanted to ask, in your audit process, were there any liabilities found on the city's part?
I'm not sure what you mean. There's a
Any
lot-
liability in the audit? Because in the audit, looking at anything pending, I just want to be very clear that there are no liabilities pending, so that moving forward, kind of like the clarity that Councilor Kaplan touched on, I think it would be nice, you said it should be in there. I'd like for us to be able to implement that in there. And going through the numbers and looking at this past year, no, like lawsuits would be a liability. Nothing is pending. That's what I'm asking.
So we can't speak to compliance with, if anything is pending. We do get in a letter from your attorney each year and evaluate whether there needs to be something adjusted for that. We did not have a proposed adjustment related to litigation.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda and Kim, and also to our team. Just a quick question maybe for the folks at home, to Bryn or to Amanda, either one. What is the next process? The state requires that we have an audit, and we have to submit it by the end of the calendar year, correct? And that goes straight from our auditor to the state. Am I understanding? I do know the process. Is that I just want to make sure that folks at home know what it is, because there's often confusion about whether the council has to approve an audit that's received or how that works. So if you can just talk us through it.
Right. Sorry, Amanda, I didn't know if you were going to speak. So the city submits it to the Oregon Secretary of State Audits Division. And there are other compliance-related websites that we also have to upload our audit and our unmodified opinion.
So the third-party audit has to be submitted, and it's not, this information today is an informational presentation and an opportunity for the council to ask questions.
Correct. There's no vote required to approve the audit by the councilors.
Great. Always want to make sure that we have that clarification out there. Great. Well, thank you all so much, and looks like another good year in terms of our staff taking good care of our finances. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kim.
Amanda.
And a special thanks to Miranda and her team, our team,
Yes.
for commitment and dedication during a very difficult year. So
Yes, absolutely. Being shorthanded when you're trying to close out a year is a big job.
Yeah.
So thank you.
thank you.
And thank you also to our municipal audit committee members who also stepped forward to help us out in this process. This is all important parts of good governance. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, we are now to commission and committee work plans and updates. Sabrina.
All right, thanks to the committees, commissions, and their staff liaisons, you have a multi-page report giving an overview of what they've accomplished this year and what they hope to accomplish in 2026. Previous years, we've had them come up and speak to what they did and what they hope to achieve. So it is at the council's pleasure how they'd like to proceed through that. I will say when we're done, there are snacks in the back, so we want to keep that in mind in terms of time. We also have a gift for our committee members. So I will let you all decide how you'd like to proceed.
Yes, I would be interested in having the leadership of each of the committees come forward so we can have a dedicated time to talk with them about their work plans and what they accomplished last year.
Yeah, I think if appropriate, maybe we just roll through the order outlined in the report so we can follow along easy enough. So first up, we'd start with Sir Jack, and we could have Carrick and the chair, maybe?
Yes,
So the staff liaison
absolutely.
and the chair
Yeah.
come up to the table?
Yes.
Yeah.
The chair and the staff liaison up to the front presentation table. And just for the audience at home, Sir Jack is the Social Equity and Racial Justice Advisory Committee. And please turn on those microphones when you get on just by pushing that little silver button.
Good evening. I'm Allison Mendel.
Can you go ahead, Allison, if you could pull that microphone into you?
Sorry. How's that?
That's much better. Thank
All
you.
right. I'm Allison Mendel, the chair of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Advisory Committee. This is my co-chair, Sean Smith, and of course, our staff liaison. Our committee has a somewhat amorphous job of identifying and addressing social equity and racial justice issues in Ashland. It's hard to predict what areas will present such issues. Transportation, planning, homelessness, art, it could be anything. And in the past year, it has been. Our most publicly visible effort was the completion and installation of the Lorraine Hansberry plaque, a part of the planned Playwrights Walk at Railroad Park, on which we partnered with the Public Arts Committee. We also invited the artist, Micah Blacklight, to meet with us, Sir Jack. We look forward to supporting him in the completion and installation of his sculpture, Ancestors Call, in Ashland Creek Park in the coming year. Our greatest investment in time is attending the meetings of other committees so that we can identify and participate in social equity issues as they arise. For example, we've spent considerable time working with Housing and Human Services on issues that interest us mutually. Our recently released Belonging Survey is our effort to solicit input from the community at large about social equity issues. We hope to be able to use the results to inform our efforts next year, and perhaps the efforts of other committees as well. We've received 259 responses to date and expect to receive more before terminating the survey on Martin Luther King Day. If anyone here has not responded, I invite you to do so. Our committee depends on outreach to be effective. We welcome anyone who has issues around social equity and racial justice in Ashland to contact us. There we are.
So we've all, in our packets, we have the information about what the committee is focusing on in the new year. Are there any questions? I have a question. Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Alice.
Hi.
So I have a quick question. The survey that you mentioned, how can people take the survey? How can people access that survey?
Well, the simplest way is it's on the city website. It's just a link. You click on it and there you are.
Pretty easy. And then I understand you mentioned MLK Day. Is the survey going to be available while people are lined up on MLK Day?
Yes. We have little QR code pieces of paper that we can hand out to people who, can't immediately access the city website, and they can participate in the survey that way.
Okay.
They're available in the lobby, says Karen.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love that. And I'll make sure that that's announced on MLK Day so people know what that code is for and how they can participate.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had a question, basically following up behind the John Powell event.
Yes.
The council, many of us attended. I think maybe even all of us attended that evening. And I wasn't seeing it. It may be in my packet, but I wasn't seeing if there was a connection between this committee and that effort moving forward. I know we've done the belonging survey. Is that looking to tie into that larger community effort?
Well, I would say we are keeping tabs on it. We supported it. Many of us attended it, but we weren't any part of making that happen. So that's certainly within our area of concern and something that we were glad to see, but we didn't have a hand in it.
So that might land under the emerging issues section that you've identified, if
Yes.
depending on how that process moves forward.
Right.
Right. Great. Any final questions or comments? Councilor Dale.
Just a comment. I just wanted to say thank you so much in my involvement in the committee, just listening to the discussion, listening to Allison, how you've taken over and chair and co-chair, and John, thank you so much for leading it. having wonderful discussions. Carrick, thank you for all that you do. It's been a pleasure watching you guys work through this. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who serves on SURJAC as well.
It's a great committee.
It is. Thank
Mayor,
you.
may I say a few thank yous?
Yes, Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. That was my question. Now here's my praise. I'm just grateful to be the liaison and work with my cohort here, Councillor Dale. For me, it's been an honor to see this committee grow as our newest and youngest committee to the city of Ashland, finally finding her legs, getting out of the building and going into other committees to see how we can all work together cohesively to have a better Ashland. I really appreciate your look and how you broke that off and going to other committees because Emily is not here, but maybe she's listening. Emily and Allison and Tara, when you came to me and said that, I thought it was crazy. And now I see how it's working really well, and I appreciate the other committee members for accepting social equity and racial justice committee members to come and sit in. And Carrick, you're doing a great job. I love working with you, and I could go on about all the good stuff, but I will stop. And I just appreciate you so much, and I look forward to seeing what's going to happen in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will move on then to Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee. And you'll notice in your packet, there's an additional document for a conversation with council in terms of whether we want to request that the committee take up a particular question and bring back a recommendation for us. But what we'll do is go through their presentation first, and then we'll take up that additional conversation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Linda Reed. I'm the Housing Program Manager and the liaison to the Housing and Human Services Committee. And with me tonight is Noah Wertheiser, who is a member of our committee and is going to talk with you about what they've been up to.
Good evening. Housing Human Services Committee advisory committee is kind of multifaceted. Housing and human services, they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of different ways. There are a number of responsibilities that the committee has kind of ongoing year to year. Those include a lot of the things in the packet here, things like a rent burden education meeting. This is required by the Community Development Block Grant funding that we received. It's a requirement of that. But we have gone kind of a step above that to do more of a resource fair, an ongoing resource fair. We've done it now twice in a big way, at least since I've been on the committee, where we do significant outreach to members of the community. We engage with other community partners and do a lot of tabling. It's really quite lovely. Along with that is the consolidated plan for the use of the Community Development Block Grant. So those two things go hand in hand. The CDBG Community Development Block Grant RFP process, that's pretty involved. Let's see here.
Beach Creek.
Oh, thank you, Beach Creek. Thank you, Beach Creek RFP that we did. The nonprofit affordable housing tax exemption programs, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund award programs, all of those are kind of ongoing programs and processes that we do. Social service grant strategic plan update and priority goal review. That is something that we have planned and we will be actively engaging in this year. We also have we've done a retreat where we focus on what we would like to do in the coming year, in addition to the kind of those the standing responsibilities that we have. Two of my personal drives are for a a review of different homelessness goals. So homelessness in the city of Ashland, like everywhere else in the state and the country, is significantly on the rise. It has been for quite some time, and the amount of work and effort also needs to be on the rise in order to meet that with any level of effectiveness. So working on that has been a big priority of the committee in general. And also the ways in supporting programs that deal specifically with what are called ALICE populations, which is asset limited, income constrained, and employed individuals. And I can't believe I just got that acronym, but thank you. Those are individuals that make enough money to no longer qualify for programs. And a lot of social services, but not enough money to survive. It's kind of this gap in available services and help. And so being able to focus our attention on programs that target those populations is also another big personal concern, but also a concern of the committee in general. So. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer. I'm not the chair. Echo Fields was feeling a bit under the weather, so.
And I'm happy to help.
Questions? Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you both. And maybe I just missed it, but I was just looking through here again. And one of the things you identified that's in here was the talking about the community education project and exploring different housing types within neighborhoods. And you noted in here that you'd like to explore the creation of a resource map of Ashland. Can you expand on that?
Yeah.
What that is, what it looks like, and how it would help?
You bet. That's a really difficult thing to accomplish, a resource map. First of all, because of the ever-changing location and services that can be provided. A resource map that is effective for the city of Ashland includes something that is both accessible online and in paper copy, which means that it needs to be visually appealing. It does not have to. If any of you have been to Disneyland and you see the maps of Disneyland, everything's kind of warped a little bit in terms of spatial awareness of where things are. And in order to have something effective for what we would want, it would need to kind of look like that because so many things are concentrated in bits and parts of both the city and the county. It would be really nice to have countywide. The continuum of care, which is the Jackson County Continuum of Care there, it's a regional governing body of other organizations that deal with homelessness. They're working on one right now, but it's countywide and it's a little bit more broad. It would be really nice to be able to see one specific to the city of Ashland.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Councillor Sherrill?
Thank you for the awesome work that you and the committee are doing. Can you speak at all to the YIMBY engagement, if any, and talk about the plans that you set forward in the goal setting retreat last year and how we kind of implemented them this year and how we're going to keep that movement going?
Yeah, absolutely. So YIMBYism, which is just kind of a tweak off of NIMBYism, the idea that rather than excluding the problem, including solutions, being able to work with and to educate all sides of the problem, identify solutions together. It's something that it's both demonstrably effective in solving problems of homelessness, but it's also not something that we have a ton of experience doing in the city of Ashland, where often it feels very much like it's a head-to-head, trying to find solutions that work best for one group of people, when actually it's, like I've said a couple times, it's a different lever, lots of different levers from different places. Part of that is education. Part of that is outreach to communities and engagement with them to make sure that individuals living in neighborhoods feel comfortable, and that the people who need services are getting the services that they need, that the kinds of housing that is available meets the needs of individuals, and also it keeps the city running well, looking good. All of those things kind of have to come together, and part of that is education and outreach. Does that help? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Councillor Kaplan. Okay, well, we'll get to it in a bit. So what we'd like to do while you're here is to take up the question that council started to talk about at our last business meeting around investigating the potential of allowing certain types of RVs to be used as housing units in Ashland. And Councilor Sherrill, I wonder if you might just speak to that. It's in the packet, of course, that many or quite a few other cities in Oregon are now taking up this kind of change. Did you want to speak to it at all?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So my thought was to bring forward to this body to see if there was interest to potentially push it to committees and commissions to see if we can work on some language that would come close to mirroring, if not mirroring, and slightly improving some language that we're seeing implemented in the city of Portland. It's 4.5 years young at this point, allowing legal occupancy and what they're calling occupied recreational vehicles. And a couple key points of this kind of fringe housing type is that the unit itself is not inspected. And that's a really scary thing for a lot of people. They think there's going to be danger, there's going to be problems with electricity, there's going to be problems with wastewater. And what we're seeing in reality is that there are thousands of people in our town that are living in what we would call legacy dwellings of some sort that don't meet current code, that may not meet current egress for fire and life safety. There are arguably hundreds of people living in what we would call now as a legally classified RV. The state of Oregon has a definition of an RV. The city of Portland has kind of formed their own definition of an RV, and I think what's important to make this potential code language or update effective is that the unit itself is not inspected. What is inspected is where it is placed and how it's connected. So the Portland model would be to require permits and inspections for an RV style hookup for power, and a water hookup, and then a inspected detached electrical connection where you could plug in a portable unit. And so similar to an RV park where somebody pulls in a zone, the RV park owner wouldn't inspect your vehicle, they would give you a place to park that vehicle. And something else that's interesting with Portland's code is they're allowing tiny houses on wheels. And what some of the NIMBY movement ideology thought was this will be unsafe, and what they found with 4.5 years of data and over 1,000 units placed is that people are creating these really nice, tasteful units. There's some regulations of how they have to be off of the public right-of-way and behind the residential dwelling. And I'm not saying that this is a perfect housing type, but our state legislator is making a lot of changes in the housing environment under emergency. And I'm not saying that we have to do this right now or pass anything under an emergency order, but that's what's being done. In other cities, we've seen good legislation come out of Deschutes County, Lane County, Clackamas County. To our south, our neighbors in Siskiyou County just passed a tiny house ordinance. And I think if everybody around us is looking at this option, maybe we should consider it too. And I can answer any questions, but I feel like that's the baseline.
So did you have any thoughts initially to help council think through this? Is there anything that you would see that would be problematic for the committee taking up, digging into this and coming forward with a recommendation?
No, I don't see any problem bringing it to the committee as a real thing to chew on. There's a lot in there. It is a piece of the puzzle, and there's not one way to build that piece. You know what I mean? There's so many different things to consider with that. Absolutely, it's worth chewing on. Off the top of my head, there are a dozen considerations about like inspection guidelines and programs that work with housing people in RVs and things like that. That would be really interesting to discuss. I don't see any problems at all.
And I think that it will tie in well with the YIMBY conversation, because I think that a piece of that is getting community feedback and community engagement about new and different housing types. And it also ties into the work that we're already doing with the manufactured home park zone. We are creating new definitions for different housing types and looking at whether we can allow RVs in manufactured home parks, which I think are not currently allowed. So I think those things will work well with the work that the Housing and Human Services Commission is already undertaking.
So if I understand correctly, Councilor Sherrill, the question to the council is, would the council like to invite the committee to add to their work plan for this upcoming year an analysis of the other cities' RV plans, and then a recommendation about what they think would work well in Ashland? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, Mayor. I think that would be what I'm looking for, and hopefully, if the body supports that, maybe down that track. With as long as there's some kind of timeline. What I'm not interested in is just having one more item of work for people to do that never produces a result when we have a housing emergency and people around us are already solving that problem.
So the other element of that could be to also elevate it in importance with the committee, to ask the committee to prioritize it so that we might have that back within a certain period of time. What would be an appropriate time frame, do you think, given what else is on your plate and the timing of other elements?
I think we can put it on the agenda and have an initial discussion pretty quickly. Our RFPs will all be released in January, so we'll be going through that process in the first few months of the year. We also have some obligations through the housing production strategy that we need to meet as well, and a couple that we're a little behind on. So I think we could have an initial discussion probably in February. I don't know how much work will get done if we're looking at other cities' ordinances right away. Our March meeting is usually taken up with a lot of grant pieces, and then we also have some regulatory pieces through HUD for the CDBG funding in April. So where does that leave us? May?
So we think 5-6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
How does that sit? Does 5-6 months work for you?
Yeah. I think whatever the body would support, sooner the better, from my opinion.
Thoughts from councilors about this particular proposal? Councilor Kaplan?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I appreciate the initiative of Councilor Sherrill to bring it forward with some examples, and I think it really does merit a good look at. As the council liaison, one of the two council liaisons to the Housing and Human Services Committee, I'm keenly aware that the committee is down to 5 members, 4 vacancies, and a pretty chock-full work program. And I've seen this committee step up and go above and beyond and create subcommittees and do other kinds of things in order to try to manage an expanded workload. But I worry about the ability to do that. That said, I'm strongly in favor of adding this to the mix and seeing a discussion of the committee to figure out how to manage all these priorities. There's also the manufacturer home zone coming up, fast and furious, which was something that was a high priority for this council, a year ago, and also part of the housing production strategy. So I think this is a good initiative. I support it. I think that sort of time frame could be tricky in the end. I don't want to have unrealistic expectations that this can be something that happens extremely fast, because it seems to me they've got a bunch of things on their plate in the first few months. That's all.
So one of the other options that we have, because we have 2 liaisons to this committee, is if there was interest by council members to do some of that research and bring it to the committee for a discussion, and then work with staff if it looks like there's an option that should come back to the council, to have it be more initiated and led by council members that are liaisons to the committee. So that would be another option if there's interest in doing that, to do some of the legwork ourselves and bring it as a more fully formed conversation to the committee. That would move it through, I think, a little bit faster. Would that be helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for suggesting that.
Thank you for suggesting that.
So, and here's the interesting piece of this. It gets more interesting is that we will also be naming the liaisons in January. So there isn't a possibility at this moment of knowing exactly who that's going to be and how that structure is going to work. But is there interest in this issue being taken up in one format or another by the committee? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and formally add that to the work plan for next year, and then the liaisons, when we appoint them in January, can decide if that's something that they can take up some of the legwork on, or if not, then it'll just be as quickly as the committee can get to it. Does that sound appropriate? Councilor Kaplan.
So you're saying the liaisons could take that up, but we've got an expert here, somebody who's Derek is Councilor Sherrill has already done substantial work on this. Regardless of whether he's a council liaison, I think we should be able to take advantage of his knowledge.
Yes, you should.
As part of it.
Whoever is there, as long as we don't go over the quorum rules. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your good
Thank
work.
you.
This is one of as we mentioned, we have with our housing production strategy, we have a lot of important goals, and we're always trying to move as fast as we can. And this committee has done incredible work over the last couple of years, and even before that. But just as we've moved through a lot of our conversations about what is the city's appropriate role with homelessness, how can we identify opportunities to build more affordable housing, all of those questions, who should get the funding, the limited funding we have. We work with this committee to answer all of those questions, and we so appreciate your work and also the work of the people who are serving. And as a reminder, for all of the committees, there are several committees at least that have openings right now, and the beginning of the year is a great time to join because it's right at the beginning of the work plan season. So anyone who is out there listening to all this great work for any of the committees and is interested in joining, please fill out your application and get it into the city. And thank you both again so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we are to the Public Arts Advisory Committee.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. My name is Veronica Allen. I'm an associate planner in the Community Development Department. I am also the staff liaison to the Public Arts Advisory Committee. And this is Cassie, our chair. I will let her introduce herself a little bit more if she feels like it.
Hi, nice to see you all. Cassie Preskenis. Love working on the Public Arts Advisory Committee and really appreciate you, Veronica, and all that you do for all of us. We've had a really interesting year at PAC. Our year started with a bit of uncertainty in regards to our biennial budget and how it was going to work. So just kind of on the look back, I want to highlight a few things, and I also want to shout out to Peter Finkel, who's not here, who helped me quite a bit putting all this together because he is an amazing asset to our committee. Most of what we gets done between meetings by subcommittees and task groups who keep the ball rolling on a lot of these projects because there are a lot of RFPs that go out for things like traffic control boxes. And then a lot of work that gets done with other community groups. So this year, because we thought that our biennial budget was no longer going to be rolling over into the next biennial budget period, we had some money that we thought we weren't going to be able to spend. So it led us in a direction that we didn't really expect, which is we thought, okay, how can we support some of our local arts organizations that are driving tourism, supporting local artists, and bringing art to the community? So we actually, sort of serendipitously, had the Fringe Festival come to us and say, hey, we lost our funding this year. Is there anything that you all could do to support the Fringe Festival? Same time, the Mural Fest group came to us with the same situation. As a lot of us know who are familiar with nonprofits right now and grant funds, a lot of the funding that people used to have to put on these events in the community were no longer available. So we voted to recommend the use of some of our funding to support these two. These were really events that happened.
but there are also groups of artists who are putting on these events. Both of them are live art events that happen in our community. And the sweet exchange that we made with them was that they promised to give us one of their artworks after the event was over. So we were acquiring art and also supporting these art events in our community, which was really different than we've done in the last 4 years that I've been on the committee, and also felt really good, like we were contributing to potential tourism, supporting the local artists, and putting these community events into action that might not have happened otherwise. So that was different for us, and in that process, we also ended up recommending the use of funding for 2 of the Playwright Walk plaques. The Playwright Walk, as you probably all know, is a community-led mission. So their goal is to have 100 plaques by the centennial anniversary of OSF. So they're playwright plaques that are being placed around town. And one of them that has been installed that was very exciting, and I mentioned this a year ago sitting in this chair, was that we got to put a permanent marker in the sidewalk at Railroad Park where the Say Their Names t-shirt memorial was. That acknowledges that site and some of the names that were on the t-shirts, as well as has a quote from Lorraine Hansberry, and the artist that was selected to do that plaque was Micah Blacklight. So that was a beautiful gathering. I think many of you were there. It was a really amazing coming together, collaboration from OSF, the city, the chamber, SOU, Barry and Catherine Thalden, our philanthropists who have also been funding a lot of those plaques and a lot of that work, and they were the original brains behind that project. So that was very exciting. The challenges for us moving forward is having a limited budget. I know we're all facing that. So figuring out how we can continue to bring art into the community with a really limited budget, as well as having an allotted amount now for maintenance, which is great because the more art we acquire, the more maintenance we're going to see. But that will be an ongoing challenge, figuring out how to drive these new art installations that at times have cost over $120,000 in our community. So what we've seen a lot in the last couple years is people coming to us and asking for support and asking to shepherd a piece of art through the process, like the mural that John Pugh, I think, has mostly funded now for the Elks Lodge building. And Micah Blacklight's piece, Ancestors Future Crystallizing Our Call, has also been fully funded. So those projects that we get to support that are community driven are probably looking forward at the future, are what going to perpetuate more of this type of large art installation in our community. As I mentioned, the subcommittees is a huge driving force for what PAC does, but also the support that we get from other committees and council members like you all. Your excitement and enthusiasm for what we do contributes greatly to the work that PAC does. I highlighted most of the things that we've done this year. Looking ahead, I just also want to mention, Kate is in the room. There's been a big amount of work done in the background by some of our subcommittee members, including Peter Finkel, to really go through our whole art. I don't want to say it's our art collection, our public art collection. So we're looking at what maintenance is going to be required, at what time, and trying to figure out, is it worth the money to put into the maintenance if it's really going to continue to fall apart? So that work has never been done before. Kate has done a lot so that we now know what we're looking at and what exists. And then there's also work being done, again, with Peter Finkel's help, to enhance the story map so people can take a virtual tour of the public art in the community. And Peter graciously allows us to use a lot of his writing from his website to describe that artwork. So that is will be an ongoing project for PAC. Of course, the other thing that happened this year was the Guanajuato Hearts, which was amazing. Another gift to the city that we were able to shepherd through the process extremely quickly, thanks to all of your support and help. And those 2 pieces are also awaiting their placement. So forward-looking, projects, we are very focused on south end of Ashland. How can we beautify the south end of Ashland, bring more art to the south end? So that's where we're looking at placing the Fringe Fest sculptures that we think they're going to be donating. There's two different ones. We've been sort of, maybe we asked for both. And then there's a mural from Mural Fest, as well as those two Guanajuato hearts. So those pieces are all in the process of figuring out their permanent installation spot. I think that's really, oh yes, thank you. Traffic signal boxes, another ongoing project. And we have hit a little bit of a snag in that project because some of the boxes that we've had painted, and I think one from this round, we're gonna have to be replacing those boxes per ODOT's requirements. So we've been curious if the boxes that have already been painted could be taken in full beauty and put somewhere else just to be installed so that we can continue to enjoy them. So that is something we're trying to work with ODOT to figure out. Looking at boxes in the future, are there ones that we know are going to need to be replaced? So we did put out an RFP for 3 boxes with a focus on the south end of Ashland. A selection committee decided which designs they were going to select, but then, we hit this sort of a little bit of a bump in the road. So we're just trying to figure out what to do with that, but we do plan to continue the traffic boxes project here ongoing. So 3 a year is our goal. Anything else?
We're waiting on hearing back from ODOT for continuation. I believe January was originally the goal. I think that's still the case for when we can continue with getting those boxes prepped and painted. And then I believe around the same time is when we were planning on issuing an RFP for 3 more boxes for the coming year, since these would be the 3 boxes for this year that just is concluding now.
Yeah, so as you know from previous rounds, this is a really community engagement-oriented project, and you're probably picking up the theme of like PAC, where we've worked on a strategic plan that isn't finalized, but I would say the foundation of that is how do we involve our community in our public art, and that has been the driving force of that project specifically too. So when we put out a request for proposals, it includes a community engagement factor. And then of course the Fringe Festival, Mural Fest, all of this gifted artwork, all of that really in its core is all about community engagement, which is very exciting.
Okay, questions? Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to both of you. And I love these. I love all these things, and I like the signal boxes. And I'm trying to understand what the possibility would be with the signal boxes. Are you saying that they have to be replaced? The ones, a couple of them that ODOT wants to replace them. And is the idea to pick up those boxes and put them some other place where there's a signal, or just pick them up and put them someplace else in the city, regardless of whether there's a signal there?
Yeah, like, do you want to put one in your yard and
Yeah,
have it just
exactly.
be displayed? Yeah, that's what we're thinking. Because
Got it.
this is art that artists have installed in our city that we paid for. And so if there's some way to put it somewhere else and have it displayed, we want to explore that.
Right. Okay.
And we're
thanks.
not sure the answer yet.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, appreciate you both. Ask for both, just to your earlier comment. But also, and I know you may or may not be able to speak to this, the suspense is killing me. Like, where are the Guanajuato hearts going to go? Like, just, can you give us a hint? Something, just tease, because I keep seeing it. And
Well, one of them is going to live at SOU, and
Yeah.
I think that's up to them to decide where it's
Sure.
going to be. And I love the idea of Churchill, but I'm not the decider on that. Our subcommittee came back to us with the idea that the other one would go on Guanajuato Way, which is, down by Mix downtown, as a really great photo op and kind of pointing to Guanajuato Way and the mural on the other end. And we didn't vote on the for sure, did we?
Yeah, we've had a couple of meetings lately where, due to holidays or just illness or such, we haven't had a quorum. So I believe at the next meeting, we should have an update for that.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's been a hard one though, because there's, some of us want it like in a park and others want it on the south end, and that decision has felt particularly challenging.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, thank you for all your hard work, and thanks for your dedication to South Ashland too. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions or thoughts? Councillor Duquesne?
I don't have a question.
That's okay.
I have a thought. I want to thank you, the PAC, for all the work. I mean, It's kind of a whirlwind being the liaison to this committee because, as you said at the beginning, Cassie, not knowing how much money and then finding out and then everybody pivot. Okay, yeah, let's go this way, and to be able to support artists. And that's so much of what Ashland is all about. And the giving and receiving are the same with the murals and the support and things like that. I look forward to seeing where everything's going to land. It'll be interesting. I am grateful for the work that you do and the opportunity to look at the South Side and areas where there's like a art desert, to be able to bring Ashland together and have that continuity again. I think that the PAC team, I think you guys are remarkable. Kate was over there looking at all the old art and let's do this and then. I'm just like, oh my God, I had no idea. So I think that your collaboration, working together and the support is so important. So I love what you do. You're doing all the right stuff, and I am just so grateful to be a part of it. I can't wait to see what 2026, right? 27, 26, 27 holds. So I'm excited and glad to be a part of it. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DeCane.
Just one question. We are going to be embarking on some additional conversations about upgrading our median strips, and there's been some ideas around including public art in that space. Is that something would there be any objections to including that on the work plan for this upcoming year?
No, we talk about that quite a lot. We've had Manager Cotta in our office having that, or in our meetings having that discussion as well, planting that seed. So there are some small sculptures from the Fringe Fest. We're actually looking at those potentially being in a median on the south end. We're also having to take into consideration, of course, driving and like this. We learned recently the sign on the south end of town got hit.
Yeah.
Five
few
times.
yeah.
So we're trying to also be really cautious about what goes in a median, finding the appropriate thing. But yes, that has been on the table all year, yeah.
Is there interest in the council having that just be part of their? It sounds like it is already. So when you all come back next year, we'll have it on the list.
Great.
Well, thank you both so much, and thank you to everyone who serves on this committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Brandon Goldman, Community Development Director. I am sitting in for Derek Severson, our liaison to the Historic Commission, or Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, as he could not be here this evening, but it's my pleasure to introduce Shelby Sharon and as the chair of that committee.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Graham. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you all. So I'm Shelby Sharon. I'm a landscape architect by training, but I serve as the chair of this Historic Preservation Committee. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we've been up to in the last year. We meet monthly, and we always review historic land use actions and any renovations that happen within the historic districts of the city of Ashland. We also conduct biweekly review board meetings on Thursday afternoons, which is an opportunity for anyone in the community who has a historic home, who they're thinking about renovating or building within the historic district, to come in and seek advice. Our committee is made up of contractors, builders, architects, engineers, real estate agents, people who love historic properties. So we serve as a resource for the community as they're starting to think about what they're going to do with their historic properties and ensure that things are being compatible within the historic district. So some of the highlights that we did this last year, it's building, as you know, has been a little bit slow in the last year and a half. So we haven't had very many land use actions, quite honestly, to review. So part of my job, I felt like this last year, was to decide what we were going to do instead. So my vision was to make our Historic Preservation Week in May be a bigger deal than it has been in the past. And so this last May, we expanded our events to include additional walking tours. We had a photo contest that we held down in the plaza. We had a big board printed out, and people came and voted on their favorite photograph of an historic property that was taken within districts. We had a railroad district walking tour, and then we also had tombstone tales that took place in the Ashland Cemetery, which we have to thank Peter Finkel again for helping us with that one, as well as Ashland High School, because they had the costumes, and it was actually this really wonderful idea I had in my head. I was like, oh, we should do some kind of a, make history come to life thing. And then once I sent out this email, it just was like this chain reaction throughout town. Does anybody have costumes? Does anybody know how to act? And it just everybody, the answer was yes. And so it actually ended up being a wonderful day and really well attended. I think we had at least 100 people come out, citizens, tourists, children, come out for this event. And then it was an opportunity for people to learn about historic characters from our past. So kind of moving forward into the next year, I'd like to kind of do that again, because I think that needs to be a tradition now. But my thinking is for the next year is that I would also like us to see sort of how the Arts Committee has a walking tour map that you can go and you can see all the pieces of public art. I'd like to do something like that with the historic districts. So maybe it's like a little brochure. If you're either a resident or you're a visitor, you can come to the Chamber of Commerce, you get your little brochure, and you can take a self-guided walking tour, learn about some of our historic properties. We've also talked about doing little markers on some of the buildings as well, but that violates our sign code, so I need to, find a way to maybe make that work. But that's one of my visions for the committee moving forward. Other committee members in the last year have worked on the restoration project for the the Butler Perazzi Fountain in Lithia Park, which is underway, should happen soon. And then also we worked with all of you and on the preservation of the community building. Thanks for that as well. So yeah, that's our goals. Am I missing anything? We do actually need to recruit more members. It's a really fun committee. As well as providing continuing education opportunities for the new community members that we do have, just to kind of get them up to speed on what it is we do. But happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I miss you guys. Sorry, it's been because I get to hang out with you guys, and my schedule in the fall makes it. So I'm glad you're, from purely selfish reasons, glad you're looking at shifting the schedule. But so I did have a question, because as I recall, we talked about this earlier in the year, is the updating the Ashland preservation plan that was written in 2008 and went from 2009 to 2018. And as I recall, even for a group that is as studied and has the historical knowledge, you guys looked at that pretty dense 116-page plan, which is solid. And I think you were going to carve it up into each take. And I know we're kind of down a few members, but that's something. Is that still potentially something the committee is looking at doing, updating it for?
Potentially. We looked at it, to be quite honest, and then at the meetings, it's just such a meaty document. It's hard to edit it and update it as a group. Yeah. So then we trying to give people homework, and then that didn't work either. I think part of the issue is when that was written, there was a consultant that was hired for $50,000, and they wrote this document for us. And there's still a lot in there that's really relevant and super helpful. It's just some of the code things need to be updated and changed like that. So it's not really that high on our list to do, quite honestly. It still sort of stands as a good document.
It's a very cool document. Yes. that definitely has a lot of.
So someday it'd be nice to do that. But
yep. Cool.
Yeah,
well, thank you.
That's my honest answer.
We've been approached a couple of times by a community member who wants to make sure that we understand the history of the donation of the land that became Siskiyou Boulevard. And I'm just wondering if that has come into this space. It's one of those places where I don't know if it would be art it would be historic preservation, it might be both. But is that a conversation that the committee that would be appropriate for the committee to take up?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think working with public arts on that would be ideal. Yeah.
Is there interest, counselors, in having that added to the work plan?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or questions? Well, thank you all so much for doing your good work. I so appreciate the awards, and I saw this year how it was amped up with the cemetery presentation and the walks through the park and everything. And I thought that was just such a beautiful way of helping people understand the historical buildings and structures and the life of this community. And so thank you so much for that good work.
You're welcome.
We are now
Mayor?
to the, go ahead.
May I
Councilor
was just
Shaw.
going to say this, just to kind of echo that. I spent a couple hours downtown during that week and did a couple of the tours. It was really cool. I've been here my whole life, and there was so much that I learned in those couple of days. So there's a bunch of people that helped with that are a wealth of knowledge, and it was really cool to experience. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we are to the Planning Commission.
So I can stay seated. So again, Brandon Goldman, and with me tonight is Lisa Werner, who is the chair of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission differs than a number of the committees that have come before you in that they actually function as a quasi-judicial body and have decision-making role for the city on areas of land use applications and development proposals. And with that, Lisa Werner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and council members. As Brandon alluded to, we have sort of specialized areas that we act in, and one of those is current planning. So we do permits and that kind of thing, and we did a number of those last year, as you'll see in the memo. And the other area that we're active in is long-range planning and legislative projects, and we did a number of those last year. I'll note that we recommended approval to you folks on the climate-friendly areas map and code amendments. And I will also note that we have our first application under the climate-friendly areas in front of us now. So going forward for 2026, we don't know what our current planning workload is going to be, because that's obviously comes in from private applications, and we can't forecast that. But we do have a number of legislative items that we're going to be looking at. And probably most prominent among those is the Croman Mill District, the master plan update and associated site review work. And it's now called Ashland Mill, and there was an open house earlier last week. And that's going to be the big one for us, I think. And we also have a number of state legislated mandates, state mandated changes to legislation that are listed there in the memo. And for me personally, I'm looking forward to working on the child care siting, because child care is very important in this community. And I guess that's it. So we look forward to another full year of activity.
Okay, questions? Thank you, Lisa. I see on here something that I also saw on the Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee, and that is the question around code amendments or code amendment to disallow single-family dwellings in the high-density R3 zone. So how does that work for committees to work with the Planning Commission, given that you have a different structure? Is there a kind of a formal relationship, or are they simply likely to be tracking your process and making comments?
I would say tracking our process and making comments, unless they want to initiate something and send it to us, they can do that. For example, the right above that is the manufactured home park zoning district, and Housing and Human Services is going to be looking at that.
Yes.
And my understanding is that the Planning Commission's inviting council to a joint study session in January, January. And Housing and Human Services Committee is also being invited to that as well. So have one big manufactured housing fest in January.
Looking forward to it.
Should be fun.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, I say this every year when we have this conversation, and I will say it as long as I'm sitting in this chair. Thank you. I'm so pleased that there is somebody who is willing to take on not only the committee and helping to move through these pieces, but every commission member, the amount of reading and the dense regulations that have to be met at the Planning Commission are just, it's amazing to me that people will volunteer to do that. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of the Planning Commission members. It is, the cities cannot function properly without planning commissions. And I talk to mayors who sometimes have a hard time fielding a planning commission because of the type of work it is and the amount of time it takes. So we are so grateful.
I'd like to recognize two of the commissioners who are in the audience, and John Marr and Carrie Kincannon. Oh, and Russell
Raise your
Phillips.
hands high if you would.
Russell Phillips, too. They are dedicated members, and they read those 800-page packets every time.
Well, thank you again so much for all that you do.
You're welcome.
All of you. All right, and thank you, Brandon. All right, we are now to the Climate and Environmental Policy Advisory Committee. Brian, can you turn on your microphone? Hit the little silver button in the front.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Graham and councilors and city manager and other committee and commission members who volunteer. I'm Brian Soul. I'm the outgoing chair of CPAC, and to my left is Mark Morrison, who will be the incoming CPAC chair starting in January. And with us is Chad Woodward, our climate analyst, who's played a great role and we have a great working relationship with and really keeps us on task. In 2025, we had a relatively productive year. Some of our accomplishments include laying the groundwork for the carbon fee ordinance that you voted on and passed in January. You voted on that unanimously for passage. That was a partnership with the community, especially the Rogue Climate Youth. Of note, other Oregon cities have reached out to Chad, including Bend and Portland, I believe, to look at our ordinance, and this could be a model for other communities around the state. We've initiated or are initiating a home energy score program. This is being done in conjunction with the Rogue Valley Realtors Association and will allow home buyers and sellers to know what climate-friendly things are in the homes, like electric HVACs, what could be improved upon, and will also allow folks who aren't selling or buying a home to get an audit, basically, of their property and home. The plan is to soon have 5 certified inspectors for the Home Energy Score program. 2 will be professional home inspectors. 2 will be city employees, Chad and Mr. Cunningham from the electric department. And 1 will be a new partner, a hire from the Ashland Climate Collaborative, who will be trained to do this along with their Electrify Ashland Now program. We updated the original 2017 SEEP document. The CPAC is really the guardian of the SEEP that was passed by council in 2017. Some of those goals proved really probably unrealistic and too ambitious, and the new SEEP update that Chad presented to you in October reflects that. There will be new metrics around our 2 biggest greenhouse gas contributors, that being gas use in existing and buildings, and Also, a measure of the uptake of EV vehicles. So that will be in annual reports that you will be getting. One thing that we would ask of you is to make sure as you have the new Avista contract either as an ordinance or a franchise agreement, that you make sure that the requirement in the climate fee ordinance for Avista to do reporting on gas use and the number of meters being used is in that new contract. Chad worked very hard with a subgroup of the committee and CPAC, then passing a new incentive structure and rebate program for green programs within the city. These updates were presented to you and you unanimously passed them in October. And one thing that I'm very proud of is that I think a fair criticism of incentives and rebate programs is historically they benefit more of the wealthy members of the community. And you passed a 2-time multiplier for incentives for low and middle income folks. We're working hard to expand our role in the community. To that end, we established a regular meeting with the executive directors of the Ashland Climate Collaborative, SOCAN, and Rogue Climate. We continue to meet regularly with those folks to discuss important climate and environmental goals and opportunities for our community. Similarly, CPAC leadership meets regularly with other City Commission and Advisory Committee leadership, and I'd like to give a shout out to TAC Chair Linda Peterson Adams for setting up a monthly meeting that involves the mayor and the chairs of all the committees and commissions and the vice chairs. They're all invited, and that I find has been very helpful. Something that's not on your written package, I just want to share a couple of disappointments. One, this has been an issue probably with all of the committees except maybe the TAC and not with the Planning Commission, but almost every committee is down 2 to 4 members. And I think you'll need to think about that. We've lost some leaders on our committee that had a lot of institutional knowledge. When I started on this committee 2.5 years ago, we had direct member relationships with folks that worked at SOU, at the school district, and at Recology, and we've lost that link times 3, 2 of them in the last year. It's been very hard to recruit members. We had lost our 2 high school non-voting members to graduation, and we've tried to get Rogue Climate to nominate some other folks, and that has not been forthcoming. The other thing that's a disappointment that's hard, I think, in climate and environmental work is the federal lack of interest in supporting climate issues and environmental protection. Our federal incentives, almost all of them are going away in 2 weeks. State programs are being kept alive only because the state of Oregon is suing to keep their federal stream of money coming. We've been working on a RESP loan program dating back to the time that Stu Green was our climate analyst, and it seemed to be moving forward, and it's basically dead with regard to our relationship with the feds because nobody's home at the USDA to talk to. But I think you'll get some exciting news that Chad is working very hard on a local program to try to keep loans available at a very low interest rate for folks to make their homes more environmentally and climate friendly. So that's a summary of 2025. Mark Morrison, our incoming chair, and our current vice chair will talk about what we've decided to move forward with as a work plan for 2026.
Hello, everybody. Looking forward to 2026, we've moved beyond a simple wish list, and we've mapped our priorities to specific timelines. These will be the guiding topics of our monthly meeting and our focus for our work study sessions. In January and February, we will launch outreach specifically targeting low to middle income households and renters to market our existing incentive programs and other environmental programs in Ashland. This will be followed up by a data collection and analysis phase in July and August to measure the effectiveness of this outreach. Next up, we have our transportation system plan involvement. While this has no firm dates due to delays, our work will peak in June to align with the anticipated TSP schedule, in which we will advocate for non-motorized transportation and research funding mechanisms. We have scheduled 2 work sprints for city operations efficiency. In March and April, and a second one in September and October, to collaborate with city departments on electrifying operations and improving our building inventory. Our last item will be about climate adaptability and resilience. From March through May, we will focus on internal education and partnerships with local climate groups to better understand our resilience opportunities, importantly before peak fire season. We have also integrated the following ongoing goals into our year-long workflows as focal points. To go over them briefly, electrifying Ashland, waste stream efficiency, equity, and transportation emissions. Finally, we have blocked out November to review our progress and draft our next work plan. We are organized, assigned, and ready to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Questions or thoughts? Councillor Kaplan? Either one.
Just thoughts. I don't have a question. I've been going to the meetings, so I'm pretty up to date on what's been going on. Thoughts. It was a pretty productive year, 2025. There was a lot. You guys brought a lot of things across the finish line. So thank you very much on all of that. I'm particularly excited about the incentives, the revised incentives. That there was a request from this council to the committee to rework our electrification incentives and add that doubling of the size of the incentive for low-income households, and also for panel upgrades so that homes can be ready when that gas furnace dies, and doesn't have to. People don't have to think about whether they can get somebody in to upgrade their panel in order to accept an electric heat pump. So thank you for all that. The other thing that I really wanted to say, though, is thanks to Brian Soul, who's he mentioned 2.5 years on this committee, but he didn't mention a decade or so before that on other conservation, the conservation committee in the city that became the Conservation and Climate Outreach Committee at one point, and then Brian transitioned onto the Climate Policy Commission, and then onto this CPAC committee. So thank you very much, Brian, for all of your work over many, many years on these issues.
Thank you, Bob. And I appreciate also the work of Bob and Jeff as our council liaisons.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you. I want to follow up on what Councillor Kaplan was saying. Brian, we're going to miss you. Thank you so much for all of your good work and of all the committees I'm on. If there is no shortage of passion on this committee, and it shows. and it shows, actually. It manifests itself with the lively dialogue and debates, and everybody has. You can tell they really care, and so I know that sometimes we go round and round in that committee, which is actually kind of fun to see what comes out of it. And so I really appreciate how active everybody is and how thoughtful everybody is. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. And one thing I think it is so disappointing of what's going on at the federal level regarding the climate and environment, but I have a real deep belief that Ashland citizens do not reflect that they are very much committed to environmental protection and climate action, and are willing to probably, pay something for that, despite, what may come across in the social media stream.
And I would just add, having been a liaison to the committee in years past, how much I appreciate people's willingness to just keep engaging on such a difficult conversation as we see the impacts rolling out across our nation, across our state, across the world, and knowing how big of a challenge this is and what we're up against. I just so appreciate us being willing to wrangle this and really wrestle with this question of what does this mean in Ashland? How do we do our part, while recognizing that this is an incredibly serious situation, and just the difficulty of that. It's not an easy conversation to work around, especially when we are hearing reports of missed targets and what that actually means. And so thank you, to both of you for your leadership, and also to everyone who serves on the committee, and also to Chad for your good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now to the final committee of the evening, the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Do I go or do you go?
You can start.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott Fleury, Public Works Director, and I'm also the staff liaison to the Transportation Committee. And with me tonight is Linda Peterson Adams, the chair of the committee, with our work plan review and report.
Thanks, Scott. Our own community, through the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities rulemaking, observes the dictum popularized by urbanist Donald Shoup that there is no such thing as free parking. Someone always pays, often through hidden costs like traffic congestion, wasted land for lots, degraded urban design, or higher housing costs, making it a collective burden, not a free benefit. Free parking distorts choices and creates public costs, even if drivers don't see the price tag. During the council retreat, both the local gas tax and paid parking, both of which are included in the 2012 Transportation System Plan and the Downtown Parking and Multimodal Study, were brought up as possible revenue sources. Council might consider adding those, along with residential parking permits, to the tax workload in the coming year as part of your strategic planning. I want to recognize committee members Mark Brulard, Dylan Dale, Nick David, Joe Graff, Dave Kahn, Dave Richards, Corinne Vivell, and our newest member, Thor Morris, who diligently work to fulfill the Transportation Advisory Committee's mission to ensure our citizens have the opportunity to conveniently and safely use the transportation mode of their choice. The committee heartily extends our gratitude to Scott Fleury and Public Works staff, including our recording secretary, Marlena Correnti, for the work that they do in compiling the information we need to be able to advise the council and serve the citizens of Ashland. And hats are off to Officer Derek Moore, who as our traffic safety officer has been able to attend our meetings to keep us abreast of the activity on the mean streets of Ashland and given a heightened watch for distracted driving, speeding, and e-motos, electric motorcycles that are not e-bikes or street-legal motorbikes. Thanks also to the work of Dorinda Cottle and the communications team to streamline our near-miss reporting into the See-Click Fix app. With the help of Marlena Correnti, we began a working group to review citizen reports on both the app and our webpage contact sheet so that citizens get a more timely response to their concerns, creating additional data points that we can use to prioritize safety projects already on our plan. The Transportation System Plan Update. Yes, we are still waiting for the 18 to 24 month process to begin. I think we should plan on Councilor Dale flying his plane back and forth up and down through town with an attached banner saying, "It's finally here," when it does. There will be a dedicated webpage for folks to follow the lengthy process. The tax-supported application of a federal Safe Streets for All grant to combine Vision Zero principles, the projects that the city has already instituted to increase safety, such as traffic calming and safe routes to school, and integrate them into one safety action plan, was appropriated by the federal government, but as with other grant funding for housing, climate adaptation, and other infrastructure projects, has not been allocated. We're very disappointed in that. The TAC continues to review capital improvement projects as charged with the construction of Phase 1 of the North Mountain Rehabilitation Project starting January 5th, the final construction contract for Phase 2 of the North Mountain Rehab Project, and the design process beginning on the Oak Street Rehabilitation Project. Reports from and about other city commissions and committees are still on the agenda. Most members are assigned as liaisons to these advisory groups. Recent reports from Rogue Valley Transportation District unfortunately revealed state and federal funding cuts, which have caused the elimination of routes and a reduction in frequency. These cuts seriously affect service, and we will continue to monitor regional impact. The TAC chair also participates in a monthly conversation with other commission and committee members. Thanks, Brian. Communication with Ashland citizens and with citizen advocacy groups has always been valuable in supporting and directing the work we do as a committee in advising you, the council. Engaging the public in their vision for a transportation system that is safe and effective, with robust conversations at the development stage of projects and programs during the transportation system plan update that will eventually be presented to council, makes for a healthy, transparent, resilient community. Citizens who have questions, comments, suggestions, or concerns regarding our transportation system are always encouraged to send them our way by emailing us from the city website TAC page, the See Click Fix app, directly through Public Works staff, and our council liaison, Mr. Eric Hansen. And you are always welcome to attend our meetings by Zoom from 6 to 8 p.m. on every third Thursday evening. Happy and safe trails to you through our town. Questions will be taken gladly.
Councilor Dale.
You two sit down at that table, and I look for a seatbelt to buckle up. So thank you for all the hard work. So I hear so much about it. And in addition to all of the, what I think folks would think of as the usual stuff, safety and just order. But can you speak, and I noticed a little bit in your work plan outline, but I don't think people realize how much transportation coincides with economic development we have here. Could you, Linda, would you be able to touch on some of the things that you're doing relative? I see the wayfinding and other things that would just lead, and Scott, maybe you could chime in too, of just things that people can look forward to, of how you kind of tie those two together. Because I know these are times when people are worried about it, and we're still doing well, but I think you guys play a larger role than you would think.
I'm going to let Scott handle that.
Yeah, there's a combination, I think, from economic development tied to land use and land use application directly adjacent to your transportation system. So land use planning and transportation network and connectivity go hand in hand, and that's why you see a lot of transportation elements associated with land use and development. The TAC reviewed the climate-friendly and equitable areas as part of the Planning Commission's work and their recommendation to the City Council. The Planning Commission will be involved kind of directly with the TAC and the Transportation System Plan update, where we'll look at projects. One of our TAC members is on kind of the committee for wayfinding to make recommendations as part of that project that the deputy city manager is working on. So I think you look at that circle of transportation planning feeds into economic development and growth potentially by having a good resilient transportation system that supports, you know, all modes of transportation, so you can get to those economic hot spots, we call them, throughout the city by walking, biking, rolling, bus, transit, and vehicles.
Awesome. Thank you both very much for that.
Councilor Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Scott, and thank you, Chair Linda. Chair, I have a question for you. What's the hardest part about learning to ride a bicycle?
I don't know.
It's the ground. It's the road. It's the hardest part. One of the funnest thing about being on this committee is that there's always a good joke from the chair and our leader over here, Scott Flory. I just wanted to thank you two very much and the whole TAC for all your hard work. I mean, when we have suggestions and there's a project coming out, our TAC members are out there measuring the roads, and they're out there, you know, making sure that indeed we can fit the bike lane there. And I've seen this committee pivot on community engagement and involvement and input. So Ashland is asking for things, and this committee is listening, and this council is responding, and it's great to see it happen in relative real time. So thank you all for your hard work in making our city safer and more sustainable. So thank you.
And Eric, I just want to say thank you for your participation with us too. You've really been a great value to us in communicating with the council for what we do. I mean, and we do a lot.
My pleasure. Thanks.
So one of the through lines in these conversations and in the work plans that we've been seeing this evening is how many committees are working with other committees. You'll see the similar items on their list of things to do, or this fact that they've dispatched people to be part of the conversation in other committees because the topic that they're covering is tapping into lots of different places. And we see that. And I think a big reason that that is happening at a greater rate than it has in the past, Linda, is because of these monthly gatherings that you have been organizing now for at least 2 years. Yeah. And it's that kind of initiative that we see people taking, specifically you, Linda, but also just the initiative to work across silos, to say, my committee is my committee and we're working on our work plan, but we know that the work we do touches somebody else. It touches the work of another entity in this whole system that we have. And I think that's some of the magic of what I see when I look at the committees. And so I just wanted to say thank you for organizing that, for seeing the need for it, and for stepping in and making sure that it happens. It's incredibly valuable, and I look forward to seeing what the committees manage to accomplish next year, because these are big lists. Like say, strap in for the whole list. It's amazing what we are able to get done that we wouldn't be able to get done if we didn't have this core team of volunteers willing to put in the time and to participate with the city. Are there any final thoughts before we enjoy some refreshments? Councillor Kaplan.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. It's not about the tech. It's about, okay. I'm a little bit out of order because I got thrown off guard because Echo Fields was not presenting, but she is also timing out of her time on the Housing and Human Services Committee and she's the current chair. So I just wanted to make sure to send our great appreciation to Echo. I think she's been on the Housing and Human Services Committee for about 6 years, tireless on housing issues and also human services. A great source of wisdom and institutional knowledge, and just a really hard worker. So thank you very much to Echo, and hope you're still tuned in on TV if you ever were. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all so much, and we are adjourned.